Good morning, everyone, from sunny Finland. Actually, we do have some of that sun. It's not. I just don't have good electrical outlets in my igloo. But anyway, this will be the last program I'm doing today because I'll be traveling, and hopefully by tomorrow I'll be back with you. Tonight, if you're going to attend the actual triangles meditation to you, we'll be offering that, I hope, from the far north. I'll tell you what, let's just have a little alignment. This image is kind of a replica of 7 cosmic planes. And we have enough to deal with right here on the very lowest. Our pretty much the highest spirituality that we can conceive is here on this lowest of the cosmic planes, with our normal solar planes or systemic planes acting as subplanes. I think, there's something like 343 divisions for each one of these cosmic planes, and you could, and the day will come, of course, fill in every one of these other cosmic planes with the same kind of detail, but it wouldn't mean anything to us, really. It would just be a kind of speculative of interest in terms of sort of mental organization, but not really anything we could do about. The Christ himself is just beginning to venture onto the cosmic astral plane, as is the Buddha. And I think that by the time you take the 8th initiation, you can do that, because, I look at the number 8, and basically what I see is a loop going up to the cosmic astral plane and a loop coming down to the cosmic physical plane on its highest level. So there's some kind of ability to deal with both, but finally at the 9th initiation, which is even far ahead of our great teachers, that is the temporary repudiation of the cosmic physical plane, while the journey on the way of high revolution begins. And I always think to myself, that's a much better picture that we can offer about the future and the millions of years it will take to fulfill that immediate part of the future, rather than kind of man's limited conception of a fairly fatuous heaven, which we can locate. Sometimes when I talk with the Christian people and I say, hey, we can locate heaven and we can locate hell, and they are temporary, they're very surprised. So I keep on locating those things, the kind of 3rd level of the ordinary astral plane for the ordinary heaven, and the kind of 7th lower level of the systemic astral plane for the ordinary state we call hell, which is, nothing permanent whatsoever, however bad it might be. Let's just pause for a moment. And in the silence, kind of come together. And our task here is to understand the triangles of all kinds, but which are close at hand not so much in this case triangles between people, but between different parts of the planet and between kingdoms of nature and between various planes. Just think with the triangular eye, as it were, and you can just find abundant triangles which we have to interpret. They have to be meaningful to us. And then seeing that triangular relationship between planets themselves and between our sun and various planets. And between our sun and other suns, and between the constellations which, for instance, like include our sun and Sirius and some other stars, and other constellations like Little Bear or Draco or Orion or Pleiades, the small part of the Pleiades, triangles there, and even higher than we normally discuss, as is shown on the chart. So we have a long future ahead of us in which we'll be working within triangles and for a while trying to bring our planet to a sacred state. And that sacred state is a triangularized etheric body. We'll worry about circles and spheres later when the solar content is higher. So that's the context in which we're working, and as I say, we just think with a triangular eye. And even on our, for Americans, on their dollar bill with George Washington, the all-seeing eye is triangularized. It's in a triangle. Then we know there can be some kind of equilibrium. There are a couple of constellations in the sky which are fairly triangular. They seem to bring in, well, at least in two instances, the third ray. One is a huge triangle of the constellation Capricorn, and the other is Libra, and both of them prominent third ray sources, as well as other things. So, we human beings, we often look at the struggles because we're a fourth ray kingdom, and we look at polarity, the conservatives and the liberals and all of that. That's the Labour and the Tories and so forth. We're looking at opposition. But there's always another point that can triangularize and bring balance to the situation. I'm kind of looking right now at this terrible opposition we're having here in our Congress in the U.S. between the reactionary element, I don't even want to call it conservative, and the more progressive liberal element, and sometimes maybe going too far. And DK says there will one day arise a third party, and it will be a party for humanity, and it will consist of many members of the new group of world servers, and that will bring some kind of proper circulation to the situation. Well, we can always look for that third point. So let's just sound the Om to confirm what it is we're doing. Good. Okay. Now, just want to welcome you, Anne-Marie and Annette and Antoinette, Barbara, Catherine, Chris, Frederick, Ishtar. I know you're driving with no hands. Ishtar is in heavy traffic there, but she can listen. Karen, Mariana, Mariut, Martha, Natnia, and Nesa. And it looks like Regina here. Aristo and Tia. And Tuya's there too. I'm going to put her over onto the other side. And Vera. And Walter. And Ivanica. Zenaide and Anne Veronica. Okay, and then over here on the staff side, we try to keep things stable. I've been trying to provide some webinars on cosmic fire. There's a lot that's written in terms of commentary, but sometimes discussion helps it come in a different way. And I thought I lost an hour-and-a-half program, so went on a 3-hour hunt on my computer, which was hiding it in some corner. Anyway, those things are increasingly available, and I think in the chat box there's something here, if I'm correct, Joe, about where people can go to find these things. I don't know. Anyway, on Makara for the moment. And tonight, Tuya will be doing the usual triangle meditation, which involves people, let us say, and your coworkers. Okay, so let's go, and here again are our crises of incarnation, orientation or reorientation, initiation, renunciation, the battlefield, of which there are many, the birthplace, and the burning ground. Each one of these kinds of crises occur a number of times, and DK brings that out, so we have to identify the level at which they are occurring. Yeah, okay, I can see that. Actually, the first, well, you can make combinations out of these, you see. That's what you can do, and various triangles will emerge. Now, we're working along in esoteric astrology, and we're over here on page 473. And actually, there's not maybe so much more in esoteric astrology that we will be studying in this particular section. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's another 20-something pages, so not so many pages, but it will take us a while, of course. I'm going back to where we are because it might help us see things more clearly. Now, what it says here is that in studying the moments of crisis, I don't know, as esotericists in training, maybe our attitude should be that we welcome crisis. It takes a long time before a human being welcomes crisis because it seems uncomfortable. But if we know where those dire decisions in the midst of crisis may lead, maybe we'll have a more welcoming attitude, sort of stand outside our usual selves, as if looking from a distance and say, okay, this is good for the soul. So in studying these moments of crisis, it must be remembered that they are, and this is important, passed through approximately 3 times from the standpoint of the major cycle. So it's not like we pin them in one place only. It would be as if when we look at the word initiation, we always call it the third initiation, which it's not. There are different stages: probationary initiation, the beginning of real hierarchical initiation, and then the kind of initiation that leads you into the fullness of participation as a mature member of the spiritual hierarchy. Now, those would be 3 instances, approximately, where the sign Capricorn could function, and some others that are lesser, let us say, approximately 3 times from the standpoint of the major life cycle. And this is a long cycle, millions of years. The people on the earth who have individualized on earth have been at it for 21 million years. Sometimes I think that for the average human being who does not choose the path of initiation, 25 million years is about the normal developmental stage. And those numbers 2 and 5, now according to Stephen Pugh, who is a very good rheologist, he an astrologer, he looks at 2 and 5 as the number of the 4th ray, and here we are, the 4th kingdom. So a few things begin to add up in terms of the number 4, the 25, and how long we undergo evolution in the 4th kingdom before entering the 5th. So there are some divisions in these, in the major life cycle and within every cycle as far as that goes. And let's see, it says 3 times from the standpoint of the major life cycle, and are also recapitulated in a minor sense in some particular life or group of lives. So this crisis chart is not a one-time event. It doesn't point to only one-time events. It points to a number of instances in which the crisis, as we recognize it, can appear. Now, he divides up our long period of evolution. Again, it's kind of like 3 into 3 cycles of import. You might say that in what we're doing here, we're doing a lot of searching for the number 3, because it is the foundation, the builder of the foundation is the foundation of the 2, which we have to so earnestly cultivate on this second-ray soul planet. So he talks about the 3 cycles of major importance in the consciousness of the reincarnating ego. He does esoteric astrology, as you know, is the astrology of consciousness and not so much the astrology of the form. I mean, it helps to know something about the exoteric astrology of the form, and it helps to know something esoteric about the exoteric studies, In other words, where these exoteric studies fit in the esoteric framework, and we are learning that. I wouldn't Although he said astrologers of the future will divide themselves into whether they're focusing on personality issues or whether they are astrologers of consciousness, I like to think that it's possible to be both at the same time. Okay. I'm not going to get into too much of what I once wrote. Page 474. Okay, wait a second. I think now we're back. Okay. Sometimes those microphones just pop open, you know. Okay, so here we are. The very first cycle, which I think is the long one, and really in a way covers the whole of progress through the fourth kingdom of nature. And, people like ourselves, we are members of the fourth kingdom, but we have, we have the fifth kingdom in sight. And when we begin to take those probationary initiations like the first and the second, we're already putting a foot into the fifth kingdom, even though we may not be full members of that fifth kingdom. So the evolutionary cycle, that's what this is called, from individualization to liberation. That's a very long cycle, like I was trying to say. Certainly, for some people, it's some 20 million years, 21 million years, and for others who do not focus on the specific requirements of initiation, and not everybody does, they kind of rise, in general with everybody else, it can take longer. And I was pointing to the number 25 as of interest. And it takes us from the stage of primitive man to the emergence upon the stage of world affairs of a master of the wisdom, of a Buddha or a Christ. In the early days, he was out on the green field playing the games in a semi-conscious manner with everybody else, Maybe it was a golf course, whatever. Out on the green playing field. And later, he emerges on the field, but it says, come forth and lead the games. Now, there's some beautiful stuff from the old commentary, which goes through the color phases of a man's evolution. From, that raw and savage red to the green, to the orange, to the blue rose, and finally out into the great light, So we'll study that sometime. That's those old commentary studies. And maybe I think I maybe have done a video on those. I don't know. I end up forgetting after the years, but hopefully they're there. Okay, so now where does this cycle begin? Well, according to the crisis table, it begins at Cancer, which is the crisis of individualization. But from another point of view, Pisces marks the very first personal incarnation. Go forth into matter, animal man. And so whereas the kingdom of nature, called the human now, takes its first general incarnation in Cancer, affecting the whole kingdom, Pisces often marks, maybe always, I don't know, marks the very first incarnation, and you're going backwards, meaning you're going clockwise through the signs. Now, let's see, going back here, yeah, it's individualization, and it's Cancer. Now, Gemini is also involved in the coming of the solar angels, if that's how you individualize. A lot of us either come from the moon chain or from the previous solar system, and we did not individualize via the solar systemic method, but still animal man aspired in those early days, and the higher part of his nature, and Gemini is the third sign, responded. So there's that duality between the high and the low, and either summoning the high so it should come to the low, or the solar angels stage that descent. They are, in a way, the whole angel kingdom is in a kind of an interesting way related to Gemini, and the animal is related to Sagittarius. Put those two together, you might get a human being. And then Leo, the sign of individualization. Now, just to give you an idea, so that's where it all starts. And in the crisis table, DK says it's the sign Cancer, but I just thought I'd throw in those other signs to show you how they play their part. And if you want to trouble yourselves to listen to the Egoic Lotus book, which is a video book, I go into it in far greater detail, showing how almost every sign can apply to the unfoldment, which is characteristic of every petal of the Egoic Lotus. So, yeah, okay. Joe, did you want to say something? Okay, I was hearing the sound. Okay. Now, where does this all go to? DK ends it. He calls it the crisis of the burning ground. And actually, somewhere else, he says that Uranus rules the final burning ground. Now, put those two pieces of information together, and the fact that Leo is the fifth sign and mastership is the fifth initiation, and you get the sense that Leo is one of those important signs in which to achieve mastership, and what is, after all, the highest ruler of Leo. And maybe we know that, well, I'm hoping you know it, because I could say, raise your hand and tell me, but I'm just going to assume you know it. It is Uranus. Uranus is the veiled hierarchical ruler of Leo, and Uranus rules the final burning ground. So there has to be something about burning away. See, your causal body is going to go supernova, so to speak. There's going to be an explosion and a lot of debris is left from that ancient vehicle through which you have functioned a long time. Now, I figure that some kind of fire of a purificatory nature clears the debris and allows the sun to shine and revelation to come. Revelation is the name of the fifth initiation. So it all fits together. Leo, this bright sign, the sun, luminous sun, the ruler of Leo, and the idea of revelation, and Uranus bringing in all those concealed things which occultism reveals. Now, when you put together information like that, and you take a lot of pieces, and you make a wholeness out of them, what you are doing is you are tending towards the faculty of pure reason, which is found on the Buddhic plane. So we all have to have this collecting and unifying faculty where a number of pieces are put together significantly so they make a greater whole. Now, in addition to Leo, another triangle exists, and it can be interpreted in various ways. But we know that the majority of human beings take their final, we'll call it fifth is final, okay? As a human being, the fifth is the final initiation, because DK says of the Chohans, they are no longer men as are the masters. That's in one of the rules. So Aquarius can definitely be the sign of the fifth initiation. And for the hardy, sacrificial few, you can, it's the way of Christ, and you transcend the way of the world's server and become the world's savior, and the doors of Shambhala open to you accordingly. Pisces is that cosmic decanate with which the Christ is most associated. So there's a triangle, as you see. Leo, Aquarius, and Pisces. And we look at it as a triangle which can signify the end of the trail as far as being a man, a human being, a member of the fourth kingdom is concerned. But you can interpret, and this is the important point, you can interpret this triangle differently. Here is the individually centered man in Leo. Here is the group conscious individual in Aquarius. Here is the universal cosmified human being in Pisces, having gone much farther and accepting through identification a much larger identity. See? So I took the same triangle and I gave one interpretation in terms of the fifth initiation and another interpretation starting from being individually self-conscious. The point emerges from the mass consciousness. That's Leo too. And so there, when you study the triangles, you think of the different levels at which they can occur. And of course, it takes some pondering. So this is the whole life cycle. That's what we're looking at here. 3 cycles of major import in the life, in the consciousness, rather, of the reincarnating ego. Okay. Which we are, among other things. Now, another cycle, and he starts out with the longest cycle, evolutionary, and we go to the cycle of aspiration. From the intelligent, integrated man, and by the way, that integration that he's starting at is not that final type of integration where we have soul infusion. It's simply the intelligent human being, probably for the first time responding to the third ray, removing himself from the rays of attribute, in one sense anyway. I mean, you can be a master on one of the rays of attribute, of course, and even a Chohan. But focusing now on the rays of aspect. And so, you're on the third ray for the first time. Third ray is not something that happens right away in any characteristic sense. Certainly not for the personality and not for the soul. As I've said before, and DK has said probably in Rule 14, that when you come into incarnation, you can only be a 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th ray soul. You cannot be a first, second, or third ray soul. And when personality begins to emerge, now that's a big question. Is the personality ray always latent, or does it only emerge later as the vehicles develop? And I think there's a lot to be said for the latter interpretation. It can only be, personality can only be 4, 5, 6, or 7 in the beginning. And if you think that you are responding to a first, second, or third race personality in the beginning, I mean, earlier days of evolution and development, it is because your astrology is giving it to you. In other words, those rays are coming through some astrological factors. So this particular stage is the stage of intelligent, integrated man to that of the accepted disciple. We'll just, make it that way. And from the experience of intellectual expression in the three worlds to that of the probationer, that's going beyond just the intellect, who is seeking trial upon the path. Okay, test me out, prove me. I want to be subject to the test, to the probes, and is beginning to take his spiritual unfoldment consciously in hand. So that's a smaller cycle, much smaller cycle than the one we just looked at. How many millions of years have passed since we were animal man, huge animal man, and working on that first petal for 1 million years or more, Everything speeds up, There's probably a formula for that mathematically about how it does, but it depends on our own focus and will and persistence, how fast the unfoldment of the flower occurs. Now, what is this intelligent, integrated man, and what is the accepted disciple? Well, let's put it like this. It moves on to the path of probation and ends in accepted discipleship. The path of probation can actually begin to precede the path of true discipleship and begin to precede the first initiation. This is all about the drama of the fifth petal of the egoic lotus. There are, I'll give you a triangle, main stages of activity within the fifth petal. The egotist, the sadder but wiser aspirant, and then the initiate of the first degree. And remember what DK said, though, about true aspirants, not just those who are kind of trying a little bit to be spiritual. The true aspirant is ever the initiate of the first degree. Now, all of that is happening quite focally in that fifth petal, which is ruled by Leo, naturally enough, because you have to look at the correspondences, you have to look at numerical affinity. If we've got the number 5, it's going to take in a lot of 5s and structures that are characterized by 5. Okay, well, and one could get onto that too. Somewhere in Cosmic Fire, or maybe a number of places, he lists dualities, triplicities, quadruplicities, fivefoldness. He lists a number of the ways that those numbers show up in the life process. The 6s, maybe the 7s. I don't know about the 8s. There are 9s. It's a very good exercise to take a number and just start with the numbers from 1 to 10 and to list, not necessarily in order, but to list those structures, those forms, those states of life which are characterized by that number. And that will really start, if you do that, that will start pulling together for you a more coherent, unitive, and even synthetic picture of how things are organized. Now, with the accepted disciple, with the intelligent integrated man, the third ray signs are important: Libra, Capricorn, Cancer, but really any sign of the zodiac. You can begin that stage with any sign of the zodiac, and in general, the path leading thereto is operated by the sixth ray and the fourth ray, the path of discipleship by the third and fifth ray, and the path of initiation by the first and seventh rays, and the second ray includes it all, you know. So maybe we're going to have more information about the accepted disciple than we do about the integrated man, except, you know, Leo is a sign of integration. You can find ways in which this integration is either assisted or demonstrated by a number of different signs. So this is, in a way, partially controlled by this series of triangles that we have studied. And by the time we reach real discipleship and accepted discipleship, we've been working through Cancer, Capricorn, and Saturn. That's the first triangle, and of course there's another triangle here, obviously, Sirius, Cancer, and Capricorn. Oftentimes, triangles, they don't just stand alone in space, so to speak. They bring their energies to the center and they target a fourth point. And we're going to see that happening over and again. In this particular case, Saturn is that fourth point, and Saturn, in a great third ray being, is part of a triangle consisting of Saturn, Mars, and the Earth. Esoteric Psychology, page 99, it discusses that Saturn is the mental body of this third ray being. Mars is the astral body, and Earth is the etheric physical body. So these are the early days of aspiration and preparing to be a true disciple. So we're working from the stage of the integrated person. Now, you can see, can you not, that this little triangle right here, Cancer, Capricorn, and Saturn, would be very solid for integration, can't you? When you want to put your life together, Cancer contains it all, Capricorn structures it all, Saturn makes it work in a linear and organized manner. These are all integrative factors. So, you know, when you have Cancer or Capricorn, you are integrating certain of the qualities in your nature, and Saturn helps you use everything economically, efficiently, wisely, not in a scattered and haphazard manner, but with a system. So you can see the integrated person could really come under Cancer, Capricorn, and Sirius. Anyway, it is a stage, an early stage of this great triangle of the Great Bear Pleiades, Sirius. Okay, now I've said that, and now I want to read what DK says. Maybe read it once again. We're not going, when we consider, what are we considering here? When we consider this particular stage, where we're the intellect going to the probationer, we're not going any farther than the second triangle. Absolutely not. Because the second triangle is the real disciple. But we're on our way. Excuse me. So let's see what he says about this triangle of Cancer, Capricorn, Saturn. All expressions, he says, which are an expression of the Sirian energy. Now you know, and maybe you remember, that the Sirian energy from that great star comes through an unknown star that some have named, it comes through an unknown planet, which some have named Isis. Now, in mythology, as Tuya has often pointed out, in the old pictures and all that, Isis and Sirius are the same thing. So the Sirian energy passes through Isis, and when I worked with Charles Jane a long time ago, and he said, well, Isis, it takes about 360 years for Isis to travel around the sun. Well, it's out there, isn't it? Because it takes Pluto 249 years, roughly. So we don't know about the orbit, whether it is circular or elliptical, whatever. But Isis is the first step. And then from Isis, the planet Isis, which is remote in our solar system, but still part of our solar system, we go to the famous triangle of synthesizing planets. We go to Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn. And here is the lowest expression of the Sirian energy coming through Saturn and probably having a whole lot to do with karma. Each one of our little solar angels, well, they're not little compared to what we are, but compared to these bigger beings and so forth, they are lords of karma. They adjudicate and stage and help to fulfill the karma of the human monad that they are taking care of. Well, where do they get that? You know, the intermediate law of karma is the fourth law coming through Sirius, and they are receivers of the Sirian energy. Actually, all of these signs are very karmic, and notice every one of them has the third ray, and in two instances they have the seventh ray. Seventh ray Cancer, seventh ray Capricorn, third ray Cancer, third ray Capricorn, third ray Saturn. Okay, so we have been intelligent, somewhat integrated in a personal sense, but not yet in a soul sense. And here we go. Cancer, Capricorn, Saturn enable the aspirant to tread the path of purification of probation. So basically, we've gone from the intelligent man to the path of probation. These energies focus and qualify. Right there, there's a big story about how to focus great energies. They focus and qualify. They add a little something extra here. The energy of the great lodge of the Most High on that distant sun. Now, you know, it's so interesting. Sirius is one of the closest stars to our solar system, and yet DK calls it, he called it distant. You know, well, you don't want to try to get there on a bicycle. You know, it's just 8 light years away, and at the tremendous speed of light, it takes 8 years, you know. So it really is distant, but by comparison to other stars, except for Alpha and Beta Centauri, it's quite close. I think Alpha and Beta Centauri are about 4 light years away, something like that. And we may have some minor stars which are closer, but we don't count them very much. They're just on their way up to becoming a full star. Anyway, these energies pour through the hierarchy upon the mass of men and enable the unit in that mass to, quote, now think Leo a little bit here, isolate himself, right there. You know, anytime you've got isolate, you've got Leo, to isolate himself and turn his back upon the past, the Cancerian past, and find his way onto that section of the path wherein he learns to feel. So it's quite a physical approach at first, and he's going to move when Sirius works through Saturn. He's going to move to that part of Sirius which has it be called the brilliant star of sensitivity. So from Isis, from Sirius to Isis, now we'll complete another triangle which gives us Neptune, the sensitivity. Remember, through all the 3 synthesizing planets, through that triangle, the Sirian energy comes, but it passes first in a way that we don't know, through Isis, or whatever we want to call that particular planet that's out there way farther than Pluto. Okay, so he learns to feel. So this is all about the path of probation, and in a way, that's as far as we can take it. The path of discipleship is different, and that's coming in here with Gemini and Sagittarius and Mercury. Now you can find this particular triangle. I forget where it's found, but you can also find something like it if you go to the astrology book and you turn to I've got a lot of instances of this program open, so I hope it doesn't crash on me. And you'll see something important here, and this goes to page 50, and here it is. That's browsing, and here is the same. Sirius, Cancer, Capricorn, Saturn, and this time he takes it farther and brings it in connection with the almost liberated hierarchy that is still on the highest levels of the cosmic physical plane and is about to go to the cosmic astral. And he has the same thing, the Great Bear, and he has the Pleiades. And the Pleiades are next in order, and we'll deal with them, okay? We'll deal with them. And then he deals with the 7 solar systems. So always remember page 50 of Esoteric Astrology, and also this particular design that we're given on some page or other. I can't go looking for it right now. And what is said about it, it pours through the hierarchy, because after all, Sirius is a local cosmic Christ, probably with an ultimate second-ray monad and a subsidiary sixth-ray monad. So, it's really along the Christ line. As a matter of fact, the Christ in his personality and soul had the, DK gives it in the Destiny of the Nations, had the second-ray soul and the sixth-ray personality. So those rays are the same, and Sirius is a cosmic Christ. but so are other and greater beings. So anyway, these energies pour through the hierarchy upon the mass of men, and they're going to lift them up into the Leo stage. Now, some of you might be surprised when you read about Leo and you discover that one of the main things said about Leo is its sensitivity. And I would talk about sensitivity to what is the self and what is the not self. So you start to come to a point out of the mass consciousness. That's the first triangle. Now, next time, I'm being quite elaborative here. I realize that. We're going to get into this the cycle of aspiration. We're into that, and then we'll undertake the cycle of initiation. And it looks to me like this is where we might find, I don't know where we find this particular diagram. I'm not sure. Maybe it's not here at all. Maybe I just imported it. But I think we've done enough. Now one of my colleagues was pointing out to me recently that this is complicated material. Okay, yes, it is complicated material. But then DK says, look, is mastering esoteric astrology so much more difficult or different than understanding the information that is presented in a college chemistry text? And he said something like, I think not. No. It takes just as much to master that chemistry in college as it does to master esoteric astrology, at least to know many, many qualities of it. It's kind of astrochemistry, if you will. Not so much astrophysics as astrochemistry, how the different qualities of force and energy blend with each other, and what are the forms they produce and the consciousness they produce. So, this is the end of the reading. Look, I know I'm going slowly here, but I'm hoping that things sink in, which is entirely possible. Okay. And this is number 54 will be the next. We've actually made a lot of progress here. And this will be on the 9th. Now, as Atuya and I maybe pretty well, almost certainly are traveling on the 9th, and we may have to make an adjustment about this. We'll check it out. We're on the evening schedule now, and it would be the morning schedule, and it's conceivably possible to do it, but I can't be assured of that by any means, because we have a long time to travel till we get to the train. Okay, so that's that, and that's as far as we're going right now. The first triangle coming through hierarchy, which pours into the masses and leads them into intelligence and to the point, along the path of probation, where real discipleship can begin. And I think we must have it in mind that unless we are initiates of the first degree and have experienced the birth of Christ in our heart, that we are not called by the hierarchy a real aspirant. We're certainly not called a real initiate, and we're not even a real disciple. So let's put that first degree under our spiritual belt and make sure that the Christ has been born in the heart, which is a great opportunity at this point, and many of the sincere students of the Tibetan have taken that at some time past, just the way his other 50 students or so, 50, 51, had taken that degree. Okay, so are there, if you've taken any notes, is there anything of particular interest to you here? Anything you want to say, anything you want to ask, point out, whatever, either in spoken word or in the question box. I'll take a look. Now, the best way to do it, of course, is as we're going along, make notes. Something of interest to you, make notes. Because there's too much information.
There's a hand up.
I do see it.
And before you put the hand, I just want to ask a question. My notes on where we are show us having covered what you have as our starting point before a couple of times. And I think you went a little further today.
Today I did. Today I actually went into the cycle.
Into the
yeah.
Yes. So we won't be starting back at that point then again.
No. I just mentioned
we would be down.
The next thing we're going to do. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I do see what you're saying. So yeah, thank you for that. Basically, this is where we are. Well, I kind of repeated it, didn't I? By putting those in. I kind of put it in twice. This is where we'll be starting. And I'll mention again, because it talks about the third cycle of initiation. So, but I'm going to finish up a bit on the cycle of maybe as a matter of fact, I better put it here. We'll have a lot of starting points. I want to read about Gemini, Sagittarius, and Mercury because it applies. So I see why you're saying that, Joe, and that's fine. We'll get going. Look, like I say,
we want you to be able to claim having made some progress.
I'm sorry? Did you say? I'm sorry?
We want you to be able to claim that we've made some progress in the text.
We've gone through a whole paragraph and maybe a bit more. But what is progress? That's just what I was going to get into. Progress, in this case, is the ability to see the triangle, to understand the triangle, to recognize triangles when they are not pointed out to you, and to interpret them. Now that would be real progress. So today we looked at the triangle Cancer-Capricorn-Saturn and Sirius Cancer-Capricorn. We looked at the triangle, mentioning it, Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn, which are the three synthesizing planets. We mentioned Sirius, Pleiades, Great Bear, but most of our focus was on this triangle that takes you into the probationary path in quite a serious way, Cancer, Capricorn, Saturn. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you have one hand up and you have two people who have made comments.
Okay.
And Veronica and Zipporah.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So I'm going. Usually, it's going to be Vera, and so Vera, you're.
Yes. Hello, Michael. It said that at the first initiation, the body of a disciple has 25% of atomic matter, and
Yes.
second initiation 50, and third 75. Does it mean in etheric body, or
Yes.
what's happening, say, in the astral body?
It means the etheric body particularly, but there are changes. I would say there would be changes in each of the vehicles preparing for the dispensing of the vehicles? It's a good question, and I think we cannot include the mental body per se, because the higher subplanes of the mental vehicle are covered by the egoic lotus. So obviously, that's a very high kind of thing. And maybe we are building in something there of the abstract mind. It could be. But I focus particularly in the astral vehicle and in the etheric vehicle. And I think that there's an increase in atomic matter in those two vehicles, with necessary changes in the egoic lotus that are preparing for the destruction of the egoic lotus. But it takes a long time. So I think you're correct to include the other personality vehicles. As far as the physical vehicle goes, you're never going to have atomic matter per se in the physical vehicle. It's just too gross, and the types of atoms are not atomic atoms. However, there will be a purification of the nature of the dense physical body. The gaseous, liquid, and solid factors in the dense physical body will be accordingly lifted and purified for greater receptivity as the atomic matter, because of initiation, is lodged on the atomic plane. There are some subplanes, and you know this, that we're not supposed to have anything to do with at all. The 7th subplane of the astral and the 6th subplane of the astral, none of that should be in our vehicles at all. So we're building in more and more atomic, and the quality of matter is rising all the time, and that will affect the very dense physical body, not only from the etheric point of view, but from the astral point of view. We know that if we have low desires, our dense physical body is compromised. In other words, it remains crude if we follow out our low desires in a way that is not lawful and all the rest. And then when we have greater unfoldment of the egoic lotus, which is on the here's something I want to point out, and this is a chart that Tuya has created here. This plane, which is the atomic plane, is the bottom of the spiritual triad, but before the egoic lotus, in many of its parts anyway, reaches this subplane, it is destroyed. So I went hunting on that, and I found out that the destruction of the egoic lotus occurs on the 2nd subplane and not on the 1st. So that is an interesting thing. So basically, most of us, all of us really, when we get into this field, our egoic lotus is located on the 3rd subplane. But as we become intelligent and we start to move towards the first initiation, it changes position and it stays there until its destruction. There are a few, maybe there's a little bit, we have to learn more about the jewel in the lotus, because it's a projection of the monad, and the inner petals are projections of buddhi, and they seem to have vibratorily a slightly higher position, but I don't think we can confirm or ascertain anything about that. They are sort of at the borderland of Manas and the Buddhic plane. But okay, does the first subplane have increasing atomic matter, and does that contribute to the destruction of the egoic lotus? I think so. And when you read about the destruction of the egoic lotus at the fourth initiation, not only are there 7 ways of destroying it, but there are many sources of destruction. The atomic triangle is a source of destruction. The monad is a source of destruction. Probably there are areas within the triad that contribute to the destruction. So it's not just from one thing that destruction arises. So this is still an area to be researched, how much atomic matter goes into this. Now, in a way, you need it. Why do you need it? Because you're going to make a Maya Virupa, either as a 4th degree initiate, or preferably, or more likely, as a 5th. And you cannot touch the Buddhic permanent atom, where all the quality is stored, and you cannot touch the atmic permanent atom and center within it until you are a Chohan. And we all know, you see, higher than a Chohan. It says these top 2 planes, I don't give you the qualities because they refer to qualities that are higher than a master, or stages higher than a master. So a Chohan of the 6th degree, Chohan of a 7th degree, we cannot focus there. Yet, as a 5th degree Chohan, a 5th degree master, we can make a Maya Virupa. Now, where's that coming from? It's got to come from a downflow of energy and from a focus within the concretizing monastic permanent atom, because there's none of this left. And that's why maybe atomic matter is increasing on that plane. Look, DK makes it sound easy. Like here's 25, 50, 75, 100%. But if you look into the intricacies of it a little bit, you'll see that each level has a little bit of its own complexity. That's all I can say. Yeah, anything else, Vera?
Yeah, about the egoic lotus, and there are 3 permanent atoms at the sort of bottom, the base of the egoic lotus.
Atomic triangle. That's what it's called.
Yeah, and on the chart, we know that it's the sort of in 2 dimensions, but in reality, those permanent atoms, I think they are occupying the same sort of location, but only different. They are form of different substance and are of different frequency.
They cannot be of the same frequency as the egoic lotus. They have to maintain, and by the way, we have to be careful because only 2 of them are permanent atoms and 1 of them is not. One of them, that's why I always call it atomic triangle, because this other one here, I don't know where I can get the picture of it.
Metal unit.
Here, right here. There's one of these which is simply the mental unit, and it has 4 spirillae.
Yes.
But if you look at this has 3, so put them all together, and between them they have the required 7. But only 3 and 3 in the triad, okay? And we don't know what these other points are in the monad or what they call them. But this is the only one we can reach right now, even if we're a master. And that's very interesting. So yes, there will be a fleshing out, and they will have to stay on their own level. Astral is astral, but it's enfolded by the egoic lotus. Etheric is etheric, but it's enfolded. So it's not like the physical changes into a higher mental vibration, or the astral changes into a higher mental vibration of the egoic lotus. It's simply geometrically enfolded in some way that, we would have to see or deal with.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, very good. Thank you, Vera. Now let's take a look over here where we have some hands. Do we have hands anymore? Whoops, what happened to the hands?
You had one hand, you have questions, comments.
Okay, wait a second. Oh, here it is. So here's Anne Veronica. I'm down at the bottom of the chart. Okay, here's a few things. Okay. Okay. Okay, so, well, maybe I'll start higher because sometimes people respond to each other. So I've answered Vera to...
So you have Zephora who says, in one, identification dash detachment question mark, and then down at a lower point it says love, gratitude. So you might want to check and see.
Yeah, those are high states. And I will say that obviously the scientific approach to the etheric, to the causal body is needed, okay? The scientific approach is needed, and that really depends maybe somewhat on identification, but even more on detachment. Now, Leadbeater and Annie Besant, they both had that pretty strong fifth ray, and they were both able even to get into a book and write it like occult chemistry. So, in fact, they were in the position of the observer, and they could tell what kind of dynamics were occurring on not only the astral and mental plane, but on the higher mental plane. I don't know how much they gave us about Buddhic and Atmic and beyond. I don't think very much. But in the realm of soul, they could observe. So detachment's very important. And the whole idea of one wants to have the love and gratitude, one needs identification increasingly. So that comes into a different category. You see, right now we're dealing with the technicalities of the ageless wisdom. It's more on the third ray, fifth ray line. But there is a section of the book and a section of our efforts which deals with the unification part. Maybe it's not so technical, but it is our next step. I want to go over here to Esoteric Psychology, Volume 1, and I want to go to about page 200 and, I don't know. Yeah. Here it is. 212. And here he brings the rays together in a way that helps us understand them. Because there are relationships between rays, and he says, why? Between the third and fifth ray, which I just said, that's what we're dealing with right now, there is a close relationship. In the search after knowledge, for example, the most laborious and minute study of detail is the path that will be followed, whether in philosophy, the higher mathematics, or in the pursuit of practical science. So we see how the third and fifth ray are related and how detailed is their approach. The correspondence, now here's the other one, love and gratitude. The correspondence between the second and the sixth ray shews itself, we would normally just say shows itself, in the intuitive grasp of synthesized knowledge, so that the divine pattern appears, and in the common bond of faithfulness and loyalty. So, we have those kinds of things, love, gratitude, faith, loyalty, it's a different emphasis, not so much on the laborious detail, minute detail. There's a lot of detail in the third aspect of the second ray, which is what Master DK seems to be practicing. Now, under the first and seventh ray, they are related very strongly, and some of you will have this: masterfulness, steadfastness, and perseverance are the corresponding characteristics of the first and seventh ray. So that kind of brings things together from a sixfoldness into a threefoldness, with the second ray somehow completing the tetrahedron. And I think it's useful. Well, all I'm doing here is just making this so that when I return to it, I will recognize that it happened. Okay. All right, so let's see now. I'll come back now to the questions.
The three that are there for Anne Veronica, in essence, what I think she's saying is that she's having a crisis about using the word crisis. And so she's substituting the learning to use energies instead of using the word crisis.
Learning to use energies, well, okay, fine, because there's so much emotional baggage around the word crisis that even when you use a word, a lot of that stuff is attached to the word. And we have our usual way of reacting to that word. But obviously, in your definition and in the right attitude towards crisis, we are pulling back, and we are adopting a more objective point of view. See, when we can use the word crisis because it means the cross, or you're at the crossroads, you might say, when we can use that without some kind of disturbing reaction, we will distinguish ourselves from the ordinary reaction to that word. Usually you say crisis and people start to tremble, But as esotericists, we have to see it from as part of the scheme, crisis, tension, emergence, another triangle, and it's a triangle having to do with the cycles of disciples and of the new group of world servers. So, I'm a pragmatist in matters like this. I say whatever works, whatever works. But I would say if we could desensitize our reaction to the word crisis, that is the way we have to go. And of course, it does include what you're talking about and learning really how to manage the energies, and from a distance, like Saggioli says, observe the personality like a scientist and be detached, and don't get your emotions involved, just as if it was something else, some scientific specimen, something that was more distant than me, Here I am, I am I, I'm this body and my energy and my emotions and my thoughts. But if I can find another sense of I-ness, then I will be able to look with greater objectivity upon that which afflicts the lower personality. I'm sometimes wondering about, that Tui and I love a movie that's called Illusion with Kirk Douglas. I've talked about that before, but he gets to start looking at his own Akashic record. And, how in the world do you ever do that with objectivity? How are you going to see, like the Buddha did in a way, the big movie of all your many lives and the things that have gone right and wrong? unless we can center in another state of identity and know that what touches the personality is not really touching the real self. It can contribute to the qualities that the real self can use. But basically, the way it says in this 6 sentences for disciples, death crumbles all, yet all remains untouched, the same, you know. So basically, it was for Alice Bailey so, and it is so for all of us, mostly, if we're on the second ray, detachment. Detachment is...
Michael, I'm sorry.
Yes, dear. Are you telling me I don't have detachment? Because you'd be right. You'd be right. Go ahead. Go ahead. Say, you know the subject I'm on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Did you finish?
I'm
Yeah, I was just thinking.
I'm finished.
I was just thinking about this word crisis because it's very interesting. In the we could say that in the mundane world, in personality world, we try to avoid crises.
Indeed.
And it is somehow translated like it is the end. Well, it is the end of control of personality when we look what crisis is. If that goes really as the soul has been thinking that it should be going. In one sense, we could, and it always depends what is the concept of consist. Is that, did I say correctly? What it holds?
Yes.
Yes. What is our concept of that context?
Yes. Yes.
Because we can translate it as well. That the crisis is the ring pass knot. It always is the way for the new.
Yes.
It depends on.
Yes.
Yeah, it depends on how we direct. If we let really our soul direct in that point of, we could say that it is also a Neptunian point because we do not see yet very clearly.
At first.
But there is always this very, very strong purpose of the soul. It pushes the personality into so-called crises. And then everything is rearranged. And we are ready to really, again, meet what Saturn is. We were talking about this triangle, about the Capricorn Cancer Saturn. The Saturn comes, lays the law, how it is the new step into the soul life and like the new laws for us. And in that area of ring pass knot, we call it crises, because all of that what we had learned is making the turn of the wheel. Things changes. So let's just welcome crises into our lives.
You and I will have you and I will have no problem with that. And of course, this reminds me that a close study of the laws of the soul is indispensable. I think there was a group that did a little bit, maybe, I don't know to what extent they went through the whole book, Esoteric Psychology too. It is the great source for the psyche. Now, look, and Veronica, something I just noticed. Look at your last name. And look at the word crisis. And so this is a very important one for you to solve, because there's not so much difference between those two words. How to deal, you can probably think back, everybody, about things that really were crises in the life and whether they led to a wider life and better. I remember one crisis I had a long time ago, almost 50 years ago. And boy, it was a choice, and I chose correctly. And then I saw the implications of what would have happened if I had chosen incorrectly. And but look back at those terribly stressful moments where choice on the path at the crossroads is demanded. You can always go left, you can always go right. Some turn is generally taken. That's the Tau, that Tau cross. You're not really going straight ahead at that point, although there's other ways you could describe going straight ahead, but to the left or the right. And that's Rule 7 and Rule 8 in the white magic. So this is, you, as the soul, has to make a decision. So I can see on Veronica that this really, even by the similarity of the words, is an issue to be solved. So however you want to solve it, you can do it. But ideally, I would say, let's one day take the bull by the horns and realize that DK is saying, look, if you're not having a crisis, why aren't you having one? So he's pushing us into it, and we accept it. Thank you for your thought. I think that's enough. Is there anything else anyone wants to ask or say? Oh, and by the way, I made a mistake here. It was not Ishtar, it was Zipporah who was talking about identification and detachment. Tell you what, last night we had our 8th meeting on identify as being, and these subjects really do come up for close examination. And so, if you have a chance to be part of that, it might be of value. Sometimes I look at this thing and I can't tell who belongs with the comment, but now I see it's Zipporah who belongs with the identification and detachment question, and with the love of gratitude, which now, I just want to comment on this. It's Master Moria, who's coming in here. He maybe will talk somewhat about love. He will, a little. But he'll say that gratitude produces the best fires. Every change of state for him, every attitude of consciousness is a fire. Gratitude is the source of the best fires, he says. Okay. Now, unfortunately, I don't think Zipporah was with us. She may have had to go. Anyway, I wish I had been able to answer that. Maybe you can, Joe, if you have her email, can you just tell her that there's something directed toward her at the end of tape? I would appreciate that. Yeah, okay. All right. So it's time. I have a train to make and packing to do. You can always tell people with a 7th ray or a 3rd ray brain or physical body by the way they pack. And, well, it's not invariable, but 7th ray people seem to know what they're actually putting into a suitcase. And they put it in such a way that it may resemble itself when it comes out. And 3rd ray people run around the house and throw things in. And I'm afraid I'm in that category. So, a little more to do. All right, let's just close.
Michael, your fear is very correct.
Is my theory correct?
I said that your fear is very correct.
Did you say fear? Fear?
Yes, because you said that I fear that you belong to one.
Okay. Yes, I see what you mean. Yes, indeed I do. Although I'm trying to imitate my 7th ray wife, and trying to be very orderly and not succeeding, but I try. Okay. All right. Now, let's just have a little alignment, just a little alignment. So here we are, carrying the will to see triangulation. It's visible. Even when you see zodiacal signs and planets in front of you, maybe we don't even have the response that says, oh, there's the triangle. But we have to have a sort of triangle alertness, which means also that when we're with two other people and or even one other person, and another person seems suggested, we have the awareness that there's a kind of a natural triangle there. And there's one thing about forcing triangles, which is not a good idea, or feeling the natural relationship between the parties concerned, and that energy can really flow. So do be discriminative about how you enter the triangles. I mean, if there's half a chance it'll be a good one and active, then do it. But if you feel somehow that, well, I'm supposed to form triangles, so how about you and how about you? And it could work out, but the dynamic is not there so much. So let us realize that in the etheric body, especially, and in the cosmic ethers, and really on every plane, triangulation is occurring all the time. And if we're awake to it, it's occurring a lot. We just tend to read over, we say, okay, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. That's a triangle. That's, that's really, and one of the cosmic fire things that I did, there's a chart, and I think I put it in there. I don't know if it's in the books, but it's all triangles. And we'll worry about the circles later, right? When we are approaching the understanding of the solar logos. But let's have triangular sensitivity. And when forces are opposed to each other and fighting all the time, and highly polarized, we often say, let's think about what that third point could be that will bring harmony and flow to the situation. We oftentimes hear about the marriage of Vulcan and Venus. And we think about, oh, here's the Asna center and here's the top of the head, and Vulcan rules the head center, generally speaking. Venus rules the Asna center, so what's this polarity doing? But we forget that unless the Alta Major center is also involved, the energy does not circulate, you cannot become a seer, you cannot open the third eye, you cannot heal in the way DK talks about it. So just remain alert to the possibility of recognizing triangularization or of inducing it. And now let's do the great invocation together. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Okay, thank you. And tonight at 5 GMT, Tuya will be broadcasting from the Little Bear Center. And if I can get onto the train is just about a killer when it comes to that. But if for any reason I can get onto the internet and stay there, then I'll kind of send you, or you can use the link that is indicated, and we can just talk about things, questions, answers, things like that. But that's pretty late, and I don't know that it works. So it's just by guess and by gosh, and we'll see whether it's possible or not. But it won't necessarily be one of the official sessions. It would just be, I could just get thrown off at any time, and that's the way it goes. So I'll just check out my possibilities once I'm on that train. Okay, friends, thank you for your participation. Lots of love and many blessings from the whole team here at the Moria Federation and Northern Light, and all the different organizations we somehow are representing. So that'll be it for the moment, and we'll convert this and get it up for you, and we'll see you later. So far, I've managed to stay on the program, no problem, and this will be available for you and for others if they wish, so you can tell them about it. Word of mouth is a very good way to go. So onward, and next event, 5 p.m. GMT, the triangles method that the Tibetan recommended. Okay, bye-bye.